Hello, I'm Bas Hamer, and I'm back again with Software Storytime. Today we will have a story about eventual consistency. Again, the goal for this series is to share the stories that led to the practices. You can learn practices from books, but if you don't know where they came from or why we're doing it this way, it's sometimes hard to relate. These are some of the stories to help you with that. So, the system we're going to be talking about was using a messaging infrastructure. And that might be implemented using Enterprise Service Bus or microservices, and it's very popular these days. Chances are your bank is using an infrastructure like this, and there's lots of reasons for that. It solves some very difficult problems. And our implementation was done across 3 different continents at the same time, and we had a written specification to get started with. And we were building this thing, right? Everyone was busy at work. The problem we ran into was something of eventual consistency, right? And eventual consistency is something where you're expecting some latency, meaning that things happen slower than you expect, and the final state should still be the same. So much like Wile E. Coyote, he runs off a cliff, you know he's going to fall down. You just don't really know when, but he's going to be at the bottom sooner or later. And even though that wasn't the case, while we were testing, it looked great, right? Everything was working exactly the way we wanted it to. But testing is a lot of simplification that you don't have in production. And in production, it seemed like the correct state was never reached, right? We had a bunch of floating Wile E. Coyotes for days, and we were just wondering if and when they were going to come down. And we were very frustrated because we had this false sense of confidence because our tests were passing. And that was very frustrating for everyone, right? So we started digging, because we couldn't explain why these behaviors were not lining up. And whenever you start digging, you will find problems. If you're lucky, they're the problems that you're actually looking for. But you're going to find problems. And we found some problems. And the problems are easiest to describe as like this. When you talk about REST, most people presume that you have this system with like a put, a post, a get, and a delete. And depending on your language, that's pretty much all that exists. But if you look at the full specification, it's a little bit bigger. Even if not all of this is implemented for you. For instance, patch doesn't exist in C#. It isn't even part of the enumeration of verbs. And the problem we ran into was patch versus put. And the difference is very minute, right? A message that is a put can be interpreted like a patch and everything's fine. But a patch can't be interpreted like a put. And the difference is in what values are missing. In a patch, you don't specify values that haven't changed, right? It's like the first image. There's no need to specify Coyote. We know what he looks like. There's no reason to update the color of the fur. We can just leave him out of the picture. Whereas with a put, you have to specify all the values. And, well, patches are not supported in all languages, right? C#, for instance, you can't run a patch command. There's no way to interpret it. It doesn't support differentiating values that have been blanked out versus values that have not been specified. And this is one of the places where we had this miscommunication. Because we relied upon this written document, and in a written document, it's very easy to miss small, minute details like this. We had 3 different teams building 3 different interpretations of how the system should work. And it wasn't just around this patch versus put. We had a couple of differences. And we had to spend a lot of time rebuilding parts of the system and throwing away good architectural ideas so that as many people as possible could maintain as much of the code that they had as possible and get the system live. So yeah, documentation is fantastic, but it's very easy to miss very simple things, especially when you don't necessarily have the same background as the people you're communicating with. Anyway, that system, it ended up going live, so all is as well as it was going to be. If you enjoyed this series, please let me know. Also, I'm looking for work. So if you have problems that you'd like to see solved with software, please let me know and reach out to me at boss at